Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Emma, and I'm the Membership Tools Project Manager at the Fair Education Alliance. I'll be supporting the session alongside Elly, our Office Manager at the FEA. A huge welcome to this session, Creating an Effective and Engaging Impact Report. We're delighted to be joined today by Elly and Alex from IntoUniversity, who are going to be leading this session. And we're so excited to have you all here at the Impact Festival, which is taking place from today until the 29th of April. Throughout the event, please do tweet using hashtag Impact Festival and tagging @_ the FEA. So Elly's going to be sharing these in the chat with you now. So before we kick off, I wanted to share an intro to the Fair Education Alliance and to awards that are currently open for applications. So, as most of you know, the Fair Education Alliance exists because we believe that no child's educational success is limited by their socio-economic background. The FEA is made up of over 200 organisations across business, education and charity sectors that collectively work together to make education fair in England. In addition to our collective action and policy work, we run 3 award programmes to nurture and scale impactful solutions to end educational inequality. 2 of the award programmes are currently open for applications until the 18th of May, so we highly encourage you to consider applying. So both the awards give £15,000 salary contribution and 1 year of support to anyone who has an idea to make education fair. So FEA members can apply for the Entrepreneurship Award, which supports innovation within an existing organisation. All members of the public, so anybody, can apply for the Innovation Award, which is for early stage innovators to help them turn a great idea into a thriving initiative. So you'll be able to hear more about both awards during the festival, and you'll also have the chance to hear from our current portfolio of 10 award winners as they share their experiences. So to kick off this session, we're going to be breaking you up into groups of 2 or 3 for about 5 minutes so you can meet fellow members. When you're in your breakout rooms, please share your name, organisation and role. And we'd like you to discuss 2 questions related to this session. So the questions are, what would your superpower be? And also, what previous experience do you have with impact reporting? So these are going to be pasted in the chat now. If you need any support or if you end up being by yourself, we'll do everything we can to avoid that happening. But if it does happening, you can press the Ask for Help button in your breakout room and we'll be on hand to help you out. So enjoy the networking and we'll see you very shortly. Brilliant. Well, welcome back, everybody. I hope that you all had interesting discussions in your breakout rooms. So without further ado, I'll now hand over to Alex and Elly for their session.
Great, thank you. And thank you to the FEA for having us today. Alex, I think, is going to hopefully share screen so that we can get our slides up and get going with the session. So just very quickly, I am Elly. I'm head of operations at IntoUniversity and I use the pronouns she and her. Alex, do you want to say hello wherever you are on Zoom?
Yeah, sorry, just trying to find me on mute. Yes, I'm Alex. I am the head of data and impact at university, but you'll hear lots more about that later on.
Great. So first of all, just a couple of reminders about Zoom etiquette. I think hopefully we all know these by now, but where possible, if you are able to keep your video on, that would be brilliant. Please do use the chat function. We'll try and kind of keep an eye on it throughout the session and we'll be asking you to use it at various points. Please make sure that you have your preferred name displayed as well as your preferred pronouns and organisation. And if you are into sort of social media, the sort of hashtags are on the screen now too. Thanks, Alex. So today we are hoping that we will be able to start the process of sharing best practice across the sector for creating engaging and effective impact reports. Just from the breakout that I was in now, it's clear that there's a real mixture of experience with this. So hopefully we can kind of share some of the knowledge that we have from many years of creating impact reports at IntoUniversity. And we are also hoping, point 2 on that slide, to encourage innovation when presenting impact. We're in a kind of ever competing world with lots of different impact reports out there competing for different pots of funding and wanting to kind of showcase all the brilliant work that everyone does. So we really feel that being innovative when you're thinking about impact can have a really big impact on that. Next slide, please, Alex. We would like you, if possible, to head now to menti.com. So if you type into your internet browser menti.com, and you'll be asked to enter a code. I'm going to try to put this in the chat for you to make it a little bit easier. But you will then find a question there, and we would like everyone to answer the question. So the question is nice and simple. How confident do you feel creating an impact report for your organisation? And then hopefully I'll be able to share my screen. I can see lots of dots coming in now. Here we go. Hopefully you'll be able to see this. So we have lots of people feeling fairly confident, which is good. Only one person at the moment who's very confident and a couple who are not that confident at all. So that's great. That's really useful for us to know sort of where people are at. And hopefully, as I said, we will be able to share some of our top tips and best practice today. This is our plan for the session. So we're going to give you a really brief introduction to IntoUniversity and our roles and how we use impact sort of day to day. We are then going to talk a little bit about how to prepare for writing your impact report, share some of our key principles, talk a little bit more about innovation, and hopefully get some top tips from the Zoom room about how we can be innovative when thinking about impact. And finally, we want to touch upon, once you've done all that hard work, once you have kind of put the effort in, once you have your impact report, how do you make sure you get it out there and make sure that people are talking about it and seeing it? So to start with, very briefly, IntoUniversity is a national organisation. We have a network of local learning centres which we set up in disadvantaged communities, where young people come to those centres. They are a home from home for those young people. They get support with their homework, they get pastoral support and care, and it really becomes sort of a big part of their lives. We locate ourselves in those communities right at the heart so that they're really accessible for young people, and so that students can get support from kind of quite an early age, long term, until they go off to university or another chosen aspiration. Our model is really, really scalable. So each centre looks very similar in terms of the programme that we deliver. We tweak the programme to make sure it's applicable and as beneficial as possible for that local community and for the young people that attend that centre. But effectively, if you go to our centre in Clacton-on-Sea, if you go to our centre in Glasgow, if you go to Birmingham, any of our centres in London, what you will see will be relatively similar in terms of the programme. And that model has enabled us to scale quite quickly as an organisation. We also really pride ourselves on our rigorous impact measurement. So that has been another real benefit to or element that has allowed us to scale quite quickly. We have always recorded our impact. We're always able to measure our impact and shout about the impact that our programme has, and that has allowed us to scale. And here you can see kind of our network of centres now. We've just recently opened 2 centres in Scotland. We've got 3 more centres coming in the summer, so we'll have 37 centres and extension projects across the country. Yeah, that's who we are. Alex, do you want to introduce yourself first?
Yes, so I'm the head of data and impact. I've been at IntoUniversity for over 7 years now. So the charity has tripled in size since I joined, so kind of scaling up our data collection processes and our analysis processes to keep pace with that has been a big part of my role. And I feel like since I joined, having recently graduated university, I've been on a real kind of impact journey alongside the charity. I've recently oversaw our impact project, which included an impact microsite, which I'll talk about a bit more later, national pupil database data, looking at impact on students' Key Stage 2 SATs results, and some qualitative research to kind of refine our theory of change, looking at how it's developed from when the charity initially started. So I've produced the last 3 impact reports for the charity, and I've just started working on a 4th.
Great. And I have been with IntoUniversity for about 5.5 years. I started on our delivery team at our centre in Haringey in Tottenham, and then moved across to head office. And I kind of act as a bit of a bridge between our delivery team and our head office team. Part of my role is using data to look at where we might open new centres. But I also work with Alex and our data and impact team to look at the data that our young people give us and their kind of feedback on our programmes to help kind of the development of our programmes, making sure our staff team are kind of well trained. So kind of using impact data in a slightly different way. We've got another visit to Menti for you. So again, I will put the code in the chat. But this time we want to start focusing a bit more on what a good impact report looks like. So we're looking here for perhaps 3 words, 3 adjectives, sorry, that describe a good impact report. If you're kind of picking up and looking through an impact report, what do you want to see from that? I'm just going to share my screen again so that we can see all of your thoughts and responses. Alex and I were talking before this about which words we were expecting to come up. Transparent was definitely on there. But yeah, some really great words coming through. I think engaging, you want it to be something that people are enjoying looking at and reading, and that really tell your story. Clear, we've got clear, clarity coming up there as well. Accurate, really, really important as well. Yeah, some really good words. So yeah, worth keeping some of these adjectives in mind as we move through the rest of the session. Okay, so you're preparing to write your impact report. It might be the first report that your organisation has written. You might be quite kind of familiar with writing these reports, but there are a few things that we would suggest that you do straight away. So even if you are a very, very new organisation, you are just starting out, you're perhaps running your first programmes, it's really important to be collecting data right from word go about the outcomes of what the outcomes you're expecting from your programme. This can be really, really simple in the form of a questionnaire. It can be interviews with students or participants, with volunteers, with parents, with other stakeholders. But it's likely to give you a good sort of early indication of whether your programme is doing what you want it to do. Your theory of change, if you have one of those, and I think there's another event during the FEA Impact Festival on the theory of change. So once you've got your theory of change, that should give you a really good indication of what you might want to measure with those initial kind of questionnaires and interviews. Really important as well from word go that you've got all of the GDPR things that you need to think about really sort of sorted, so that you don't come across any sort of barriers or safeguarding issues there. The second kind of point that we wanted to make here is that there is a lot of publicly available data out there. The government publish huge spreadsheets full of information and data about schools in particular, but also areas and locations. So there's a few examples on there, but it can seem quite daunting, particularly if you're kind of downloading a government spreadsheet and there are huge amounts of information in there. But it's really worth kind of taking the time to look through it, to try and sort of sift through and get out the bits that are relevant for you and useful for you, because you can really use them to kind of make your points and make your case as part of your impact report.
Cool, thanks, Elly. So I'm going to go through some of the key principles that we use at IntoUniversity to guide our impact reporting and why we think they're important. So these are based on our own experience and what works for our organisation and our stakeholders. So they're probably not going to apply in exactly the same way at every organisation, but hopefully it's useful to see an example of how a charity that's growing really quickly has approached impact reporting. And as well as me talking, there'll be some activities to think about how these principles might be applicable to your own impact reporting and share your own examples of good practice and innovation. So the key principles that we use to guide our impact reporting are tell a coherent story, identify your key messages, combine personal stories with data, and innovate. So the first point is a simple one, but it's sometimes easy to forget when you just want to get on with kind of showing the results of your impact measurement. So depending on your target audience, many of the people reading your impact report may not have in-depth knowledge of what your organization does and why. So I find it really helpful to think of impact reporting as a story, with each part kind of leading logically onto the next. So to use an example from our experience, it's not always clear to some of our stakeholders why getting more of the students we work with into university is a good thing. So it really makes sense to start with setting that context before moving on to looking at whether we're succeeding in that goal. So these on the slide here are the sections that we use to structure our impact reporting, which hopefully makes it clear to the audience as they work through those sections why they should be interested in our impact reporting and in what we're doing. The second point is to have a clear idea of what you want people to take away from reading your report. So we're going to give you a chance to think about and discuss this in the context of your own organizations in a few minutes. But first, as an example, here are the two key messages that we try to convey with our report. So firstly, that IntoUniversity improves students' chances of getting into university. And then also that IntoUniversity is an organization that takes impact measurement seriously. So the first one of these is kind of our key message about our data and about our impact data that we've collected. So this is on the slide, the first page of our impact report, and it just shows basically all the key data that we have that makes that point. So even if people only read the first page of the report, that's hopefully still the message that they're going to take away. We also produce basically just what's on the slide there as a slightly tweaked one-pager. So if we just need a summary of our impact rather than the full report, we can just use that. This second message, that we're an organization that takes impact measurement seriously, is more kind of about us communicating who we are and what we think is important. So we want to show through the report that impact measurement is something we've spent a lot of time thinking about and working on. And that's something that particularly appeals to some of our key funder groups, which are universities and corporates. So pretty much we try and make sure that everything about our report conveys that message. So when we first developed the design approach for our impact reports, we decided to go for something that looks like a report a bank might produce, to kind of reinforce the idea that impact is a serious matter, and encourage our corporate partners to treat the report in the same way they might treat the report they were dealing with as part of their day job. as we've grown as an organisation and been able to have a dedicated data and impact team, we've been able to make this point in other ways too. So our data and impact team produces the report, not our fundraising team or our comms team, which from what I know is quite unusual. I think it gives the report a slightly different feel to that of many other organisations. We also try to include lots of in-depth analysis in the report, so not just our headline results. So this is all analysis that we'd want to be doing internally anyway to help us learn and develop our understanding. And by putting it in the report, we're demonstrating that we're doing that work, and it also emphasises our transparency and accountability. So, for example, the data we collect on how many of our students get a university place could just be summed up in one stat. But in our most recent impact report, we also included 14 pages of further analysis of that data, just to kind of show that is all stuff that we're doing and that we're looking at. So for us, and this may not line up for all of you, I saw that concise was one of the most popular words in that word cloud. A deliberate consequence of this approach is the physical size of our report. So our co-founder always talks about the thump that he'd like the report to make when it lands on someone's desk. He's kind of joking, but it is also a serious point, which is that the level of detail in the report kind of reassures people that we've really given serious consideration to our impact measurement. So I'm not going to go through these slides in detail because that's not really the point of the slide, but these are examples of some of the detailed analysis that we've included in our recent impact report, just beyond kind of our key impact stats. So the first one looks quite complicated, but it's actually really easy to produce with a free online tool. And it's only got 2 pieces of data on it, which is students' home postcode and then where they went to university. So it's just showing how they kind of dispersed across the country. And that's information we can feed into the national conversation around disadvantaged students tending not to travel very far from home when they go to university. The second one up there is just comparing university progression rates at the different centres to a benchmark that's specific to that centre. So again, just by giving that more detailed breakdown, as well as just our headline of 68% of our students went to university, we're again trying to show that we've kind of delved a bit deeper into the data and emphasising our transparency and kind of what we've found out. So now a chance to have a think about how this might apply to your own impact reporting. So feel free to turn off your camera, whatever you want, and just spend 2 minutes thinking about this question. What are the key messages your organisation would like to convey through its impact reporting? So we suggest thinking of a key impact message and a key message related to the organisation's values. But if you want to do that slightly differently, then that's fine too.
Okay, that is your 2 minutes up. We are going to think about this a little bit more now. We're going to put you into small breakout groups of about 3 people for probably about 4 minutes rather than 5. And we'd like you to think about how you can communicate your key messages, those ones you were just thinking about, through your impact reporting. We'd encourage you to really think about the key stakeholders for your organisation. So that could be young people, it could be trustees, your staff team, your volunteers. Do they already know those messages that you've just written down? If you were to ask any member of your staff team, would they be able to tell you those messages? If you were to ask your trustees, would they be able to tell you those messages? And how can you reinforce them and convey them more effectively through your impact reporting? So we'll give you just about 4 minutes to think about this and discuss in your breakout rooms.
Welcome, Iman. Oh, everyone's just about to come back.
Okay, hopefully those were interesting and productive discussions. I know 4 minutes is really not a lot of time, but hopefully it kind of got the creative juices flowing a little bit, and you will have kind of come up with a few thoughts or ideas that you might want to take away. I think I'm going to hand back to Alex now.
Yes, thanks, Elly. So I'm just going to move on to the next principle that I want to talk about, which is the idea of combining personal stories and data to tell your impact story effectively. So the way I like to think of this is that case studies and quotes kind of show how much of an impact your work can have. And then your data shows that you are having that impact on a wider scale. So for example, here's a student that we've worked with for over 10 years saying that IntoUniversity has changed his life. So reading this quote and the full case study that goes with it should leave someone who's read that, convinced that our work has undoubtedly had a big impact on that individual student. And having shown that, we then follow that up by presenting data that suggests this level of impact is common on a larger scale. So in our case, we've got data showing that the students we worked with are much more likely to go to university than similar students nationally. So hopefully suggesting that the kind of life-changing impact that that student talked about is not just a one-off. The final principle that I wanted to talk about is innovation. So when we produced our first impact report back in 2011, we were one of the first educational charities to do so. And actually at the time, just having an impact report was kind of seen as quite innovative. Now it's something most charities do, but I think there's still a lot of scope to be creative in how you measure and report your impact. So we kind of aim to never stand still on impact measurement and try to make sure each report that we do is better than the last one. So I'm going to give you a few examples of some of the more recent ways we've tried to be innovative in presenting our impact. While I do that, it would be really great if you could put any ideas that you have for innovative impact reporting or anything you've already done in the chat, and Elly will pick out one or two and ask you to share a bit more with the group. So a couple of examples from our work are that we've recently produced an interactive impact microsite. So basically the idea is to put all our data online, make it available, so funders and anyone who's interested can have more of a look at it and dig into it and try and have a look at specific questions that are interesting to them. So that's all about this idea of transparency, being accountable to our stakeholders. We also had a video ethnography project. So this is a research approach that uses observation and interviews to try and understand the community. So in this case, we had a video ethnographer focus on one specific centre and its local community. So I won't show the whole video here because it's quite long, but if anyone's interested, I can definitely share a link and you can have a look at what we produced. Photographic case studies was a different approach again. So we worked with a professional photographer to shift the focus of the case study slightly. So the emphasis was on the student and what's important to them, with just a little bit of information alongside showing the impact working with IntoUniversity at Hadelman. So the photographer spent a few hours with each student talking to them, and they worked together as a collaborative process to set up a portrait photo, emphasizing the idea of something that's important to the student. And then alongside that, the photographer pulled together some of the quotes that had come out of this conversation with the student to show their experience of IntoUniversity. So this is one of the examples. So this is a student from our Clacton-on-Sea Centre. You can see the things that were important to him were his bike and his best friend. And then alongside that, we've just got a little bit of information about his interaction with IntoUniversity. We also had our impact data externally audited. So again, that's this idea of transparency and giving our funders extra confidence in the results that we're reporting. For our next impact report, we're thinking about producing a series of short videos to accompany the report. So much more kind of like snapshot, really short takes on little bits of information. So that's kind of our big plan for the next report going forward. Anything you wanted to highlight from the chat, Elly?
I think we had one thing from Anna at Career Ready. Anna, I don't know if you want to unmute yourself and maybe tell us a little bit more.
Yeah, sure. It was just the idea of reporting was these are not things that we've done yet, but are thinking about doing. So reporting not only how, what we've achieved, the impact that we've had over the past year, but how that compares to previous years, so hopefully showing an improvement, and potentially also how we're performing against more strategic goals that are kind of perhaps wider or higher than just a theory of change.
Great, thank you. Okay, I think if we can move on to the next slide, Alex. Thank you. Yeah, so we want to try a waterfall of ideas for sharing your impact report. So imagine you've done all the hard work and now it's just a case of getting it out there, making sure people are talking about it and sharing all of your hard work. So we're going to try this. We do it with our young people quite a lot at IntoUniversity. So what I would like you to do in a second is to type into the chat an idea for how you might be able to share your impact report, but don't click enter or send yet, because what we're going to do is we're going to try and create a waterfall of all of our ideas by all clicking send at the same time. Okay, so I'm going to give you maybe 10 more seconds to type in an idea about how you might be able to share your impact report once it is complete. Hopefully we've got a few ideas from people. Okay, and when you're ready, please click send, and hopefully we will see lots of brilliant ideas in the chat. Yeah, some really interesting ones there. Video and animation is definitely something we're thinking about. Social media, yeah, great. Next slide, please, Alex. So here are just kind of a couple of ideas from us. So lots of you picked out social media then being really important, and it's definitely one that we use. In fact, after we launched our last impact report, we had sort of scheduled tweets that went out each day afterwards with kind of different kind of key messages and key graphics so that we could try and kind of appeal to different audiences. LinkedIn is a great way to share it as well, and kind of get it out there in a more professional environment. We go kind of old school and we like to post out our impact report to some of our key stakeholders as well. Lots of people like to have that hard copy and be able to kind of, as Alex said before, feel how hefty it is and feel all that kind of impact data and see all the nice pictures and things. So we definitely tried to do that. But we also know that some people prefer kind of the electronic copy, so we make sure to get that out there too. We think it's also really important to make sure all of our learning centres across the country have a good stack of impact reports. So if they're going into schools, they can take one along, ideally leave it kind of on the staff room coffee table. So perhaps a member of school staff who might not be as familiar with you can kind of pick it up, have a look at what you're doing, perhaps spot some of their students featured in the impact report, and that just gets you a kind of bit of extra buy-in. And similarly, we quite often with our centres have people kind of popping in, and it's nice to be able to give them something to show what we're doing. I think a couple of people mentioned this in the chat, but for our last impact report, it was the culmination of what we called the impact project, which was some of the things that Alex mentioned sort of coming to a close, and as well as the sort of latest impact report. And we were able to kind of launch all of those at a launch event. We held it at one of our corporate partners, and were able to kind of really sort of celebrate and shout about our impact. It also gave stakeholders a chance to kind of come and quiz us and interrogate us on our data, and it led to some really, really interesting discussions with various sort of partners and things, and gave us some ideas for kind of further impact projects and our next impact report. Next slide, please, Alex. Okay, so we are nearly at the end of the session. I know we've kind of bombarded you with lots of information. We'd like you to have just sort of 2 or 3 minutes now to reflect a little bit on the session. So again, feel free to turn your camera off if you'd like to, but we would like you to think about or think of 3 ways that you are going to share your next impact report. So you might be able to use some of those ideas in the chat for that. We'd like you to think of 2 ideas that you want to take away, take back to your organisations and teams to kind of think about for your next impact report. And finally, we want you to just kind of remind yourself of that one of those key messages that you wrote down that again, you might want to sort of take away. So we'll give you 2 more minutes to do that. Okay, if you can finish off the idea that you're writing or thinking. We've got 1 or 2 minutes in case there are any questions. So if there are questions, please put them in the chat and Alex and I will try to respond to them if we can. And then if there are no questions, we can hand back to the FEA. Alex, I don't know if you wanted to respond to the question about the MPD. Oh, you've done it already.
Yeah, sorry, I can see there are quite a lot of questions in the chat. I haven't had time to answer all of them. I don't know if there's some way of following up on the questions afterwards.
Okay, in that case, yeah, if you have any other questions in the next couple of minutes, please do put them in the chat and we will try to respond. But that is it from us. Thank you for listening and engaging in all the different activities that we have done this afternoon. Please do kind of reach out to us if you have any questions. We'd be more than happy to have a chat. And I'll hand back over to the FEA.
Brilliant. Well, a huge thank you to Elly and Alex for such a great session. So could I please ask everyone to come off mute and to give them both a big round of applause. Amazing. Thank you, everybody. So all of your feedback is invaluable to us, especially since this is the first year that we're running the Impact Festival. So please feel free to send us an email with any immediate thoughts to our FEA events account. So Elly is going to be sharing this in the chat with you now. And we'll also be sending out a survey after the festival. So we'd love for you to please complete that. But before you go today, we'd really like to kind of gather some quick thoughts about this session. So Elly is going to be launching a poll in a moment. So please could you fill out the poll that is about to pop up on your screens. Brilliant. So hopefully everyone can see the poll. You can start filling that in. So you should be able to see 4 questions. Great, we've got a couple people who've done it already. Amazing. Great, we're at 50%, so give everyone a few more final moments to submit your answers. Brilliant, I think just waiting on 1 or 2 people and then we can close the poll. Great, I think we're just waiting for, oh, that's it. Everyone's done. Amazing. Thank you so much. So we have some great sessions coming up this week, such as measuring well-being and social and emotional skills. We also have a session on leading through uncertainty and adapting to change, and another one as well on working with schools and other channels to support young people. So we have lots and lots of different sessions coming up, not only this week, but next week as well. So we would love for you to continue to join us. If for whatever reason you're unable to make any future sessions that you are interested in, don't worry, as we'll be sending session recordings to everyone after the sessions take place. So that just leaves me to say thank you so much again to Elly and Alex and to all of you for joining, and we hope that you enjoy the rest of the festival.